Hello. The Divine Code reading for November 23rd, pages 337 and 338. We're in the chapter, The Precepts Pertaining to Fetuses and to Eggs. And today's reading would go through the end of that chapter. Topic number 16. The following rules apply if one struck a bird and caused an egg it was carrying to fall out. Birds, most reptiles, including most lizards, turtles, and snakes, and monotreme mammals, the echidna and platypus, reproduce by laying eggs that have protective shells. The rules in this and the following topic apply equally to birds and any other of these creatures and their eggs. I would suggest, I don't know for certain, but I would suggest that reptiles are probably not actually covered by this, as Abram and Mackay only would be land and farm mammals and birds. So they probably just put the reptiles in for to make it sound more complete to describe what an egg is. So these following rules would apply to birds and land and I guess the only mammals are the two that were listed, the platypus and the echidna. So if the egg is okay, so in this case, if a person comes up to a bird or comes up to a platypus and it startles it, and the bird or the platypus dislodges its egg before it would have naturally done so. So is that considered a limb of a living animal, or is it not considered a limb of a living animal at that point? If the egg is fully developed with both a white and a yolk, although the shell is not formed, and the egg is still a soft membrane, it is permitted, for then it is already considered as independent from the mother. So I guess at a certain point of the development, normally the eggs we buy at the grocery store have a hard shell. And some point in the development of the egg, it has a softer shell. But it has the yolk and it has the egg white. So it's developed, just the shell hasn't fully developed. At that point, it's considered an egg. And an egg is considered independent of the mother. If, however, the egg still requires the mother for development, it is considered as part of the bird organs. And this question is you can be compared with the cesarean section. The questions of whether or not an animal born through a cesarean section is considered a viable animal or not a viable animal. And similarly, if it's a viable egg by whatever standards that's being considered, if it's considered an egg that, because it has the white and the yolk and has at least a soft membrane, it would have a type of viability. Therefore, it's considered independent. But if it's not, if it hasn't developed the membrane yet, and if it's still in an earlier stage of without the clear yolk and egg, or yolk and egg white, then it would be considered as part of the mother. And it is considered as flesh removed from a living animal. Shokanoric Uridea 86, and Minka Kinok Commandment 452, and this applies to Gentiles as well as Jews. So the rules concerning at what stage is the egg considered part of the mother, and at what stage is it considered separate from the mother, rules that apply to a Jew would also apply to a non-Jew. If a bird lays eggs naturally, even if they are not fully developed, through Katan Sofer Uridea, chapter 19, questions whether eggs might be forbidden to Gentiles as Abraham and Mackay, all other authorities permit it. The reason is because it only regards Jews is that there's a debate as to why bird eggs are permitted in general. Since a Jew must eat only kosher slaughtered meat, but eggs come from birds that have not been slaughtered. So the Jew is only allowed to eat meat that comes from a kosher slaughter. And therefore, they would have a very distinct concern about whether or not the egg is considered, if the egg is considered still part of the mother, then the mother would have to be kosher slaughtered before the egg would be permitted. But if the egg is not considered part of the mother, then the kosher slaughter would not be important concerning the status of the egg. For Gentiles who do not need kosher slaughtered meat, the prohibition of Abraham Mackay is not dependent on the laws of kosher slaughter. Since the egg is naturally released from the bird at the point when it's no longer part of her body, it is not Abraham Mackay, severed from a living animal. This explanation follows Zakar Yitzchak, chapter 33, which makes this distinction between the separate prohibitions of Abraham Mackay for Jews and for Gentiles. So if the bird lays eggs naturally, even if they're not fully developed, or one slaughters and kills a bird and discovers undeveloped eggs inside that were still dependent on the mother, the eggs are permitted. So in either case, if both of these are talking about eggs that are not fully developed, if the egg has discharged from the mother, the chicken lays an egg, the egg is not fully developed for whatever reason, but the chicken has laid the egg in a natural manner. It wasn't forced like by being startled, but rather it did it on its own. Or in the case where the bird is killed and undeveloped eggs are found within, in either case, the undeveloped eggs would be permitted. Topic number 17. A chick that is being formed in its egg until it cracks the eggshell is not considered a bird, but has the status of a sheretz type creature. Rambam, Laws of Forbidden Foods, 3.8, Shokanoric Uridea, chapter 86. Though it is forbidden to cut the limb from an unhatched chick because of the prohibition against causing pain to a living animal, it may still be permitted for the purpose of human healing, as opposed to the prohibition of eating Abraham Mackay. So if there's a need to cut up a unhatched chicken for whatever reason. I can't imagine the need, but if there is a need, it would be similar. It would actually be similar to. It would be similar in this case to cutting the limb off a house mouse, which is also a Sherritt's creature. If there's a reason to do so, which normally there would not be, but if there was a reason to do so, otherwise it would be not permitted because it causes pain to the creature. But it's not an issue of limb of a living animal at that point. '18. There is a difference of opinion with regard to worms that are found inside a mammal or bird. That is, inside its lungs, its limbs, or beneath the skin during a lifetime. So the question is, okay, there's an animal has worms that naturally occur, parasitic worms. They're living off of the animal. They're living off the cow. So what's the status of those worms? Are they part of the cow? Are they not part of the cow? Yeah. There are some opinions that maintain that they are considered as part of the animal's meat. Hence, if these worms remain alive after the animal's death, they can be considered as meat from a living animal. Now, there's got to be something different about this sentence, because if the animal's dead, even if they're considered part of the meat and the animal's been slaughtered, then it would not be, and even if the parasitic worms are wiggling about, they're still alive. If they're considered part of the meat, and if the animal is dead, then they're not considered part of Avram and Machai. The only way I can make sense out of this would be if they're part of if a limb was taken off a living animal and someone opened it up and found worms inside, would the worms be permitted? Then it would matter as to whether or not the worms are part of the meat. Otherwise, I honestly don't understand what the sentence is bringing to us, and there's no clear footnote to understand it. But I don't think that that's the reasoning. There's something more here that needs to be developed better and explained. It's probably something that exists within Jewish halakha that a book has been written on. It would explain what it is that's being brought out here. According to these views, it is forbidden to cook this meat together with these worms, for even after the worms die, they are forbidden. Okay, so apparently it would be permitted to cook the meat. So it's not an animal this is not a limb of a living animal. This is a slaughtered animal that the meat is permitted. The worms might be considered, the parasitic worms might be considered limb off a living animal, but what living animal it's a limb of, I'm not clear. As I said, this is something that needs to be explained in more detail. It's obviously part of Jewish halakha somewhere that it's referring to. Other authorities, however, do not forbid these worms. And for the authorities that do not forbid the worms, there is a number of places. So maybe in these other places that would explain why it might be considered forbidden. And these other places, the Pre-Megiddo, Seed-Free Dot, 8442, Mitzbiat, Zahav 84:21, responsa of Rabbi Shneur Zalman, chapter 15, Samach Tzedek, Yeridea, chapter 63, responsa Beit Shlomo, Yeridea, chapter 18, and Maharshan Da'at Torah, Yeridea 41:17. So these are the authorities that would consider it permitted to eat the worms that are found within a slaughtered carcass. And I would assume that by examining why it's permitted, we might be able to figure out why people would think it's not permitted. Because I can't imagine there being a question regarding Abraham Akai at this point. But obviously there is. Worms or other larvae that grow in the meat of a carcass are permitted. Shulchan Aruch, Yeridea 84. So this last part is regarding, there's a prohibition of a Jew eating bugs. And that's a specific prohibition for Jews. Jews go into great lengths to primarily checking their produce for aphids and all sorts of different bugs that they're not permitted to eat. And therefore, any maggots that might get into meat that's after the meat was after the meat was slaughtered, and that apparently this connects it into the next topic also. Those are permitted. Topic number 19. This applies when worms that grow in an animal. On the other hand, worms that enter the animal's body from the outside through its mouth, nose, skin, and the like are permitted and may be cooked with the animal's meat. This is clear since they come from outside the animal. They have no prohibition of Abraham Akai like any insect. So these are they're not embedded in the meat. If they're embedded in the meat, that's the issue. Now, after the death of the animal, the carcass can be infested by maggots that kind of go into the meat, and that was the purpose of the last one. But now we're looking at insects that just kind of buzz around, get swallowed or come in through the lungs, but it's not embedded in it. It's just it's part of the windpipe or whatever. That's not an issue. It's only if it's embedded in the meat that we're trying to understand. Regarding whether they grew in the animal or entered from the outside, they are permitted. As explained in topic 6.8, any doubt in a Torah precept is decided leniently as it applies to Gentiles. See Torah Yeridea 41:14. And this leniency would also be even more so because most Torah authorities would not consider any of the bugs to be a concern for Gentiles. It's only a minority opinion that says that there might be a concern. So in that case, there'll be a leniency. The doubt has doubt. So there's really no concern about bugs for Gentiles. Thank you.